Hi, welcome back to Destination Baby. Thank you for all the views of our first show. We were really excited. Over 700 people have watched the video now, so that's really pleasing, but we'd love for you to share it with your friends. This week we're going to be talking about ladies' experiences of going into labour and how they knew they were in labour, and I'm joined by Shauna today, and Shauna has 3 children. Shauna, tell us all about yourself.
Yes, I have 3 children, a boy and 2 girls, and each of the labours was very different, so I'm going to be looking forward to telling you about those today.
And before we do talk more about Shauna's experiences of going into labour, we have a little bit of TV clips from some of the soap operas for you to watch, just so you can see how labour is often shown on mainstream television and how that compares to the reality.
I'm going to kill him.
Oh, no, don't get stressed. It's not good for the baby.
No, you're all right, darling, yeah. Lauren, give me the phone.
It's all right. It's together now. That means the baby's coming soon.
Where's your dad? Where the bloody hell have you been?
All right, darling.
You promised you'd be here.
Yeah, listen, I'm here. I'm all right. You okay?
I will be when you get me to the hospital.
The contractions are coming much faster
Come on,
now.
darling. All right, thank you. Let's get going then, shall we, babe?
Oh, can I come?
No, you stay here. Lauren, can you get all your stuff together? You get your sister and you go over to Grandma Dot's, all right? Put you in charge, okay? All right?
Love you too.
All right, it's the bag. Let's go.
Oh,
Whoa, you all right?
I'm not going to make it. Give me a call an ambulance.
All right.
Max, I need you!
Now, Tanya, you're going to feel the desire to push, but I don't want you to push, okay?
All right, Ellen, I think it's too late for that.
Okay, Max, can you see the head yet?
Yeah, I can see it. I can see the head, yeah.
Okay, so it's time. Now, in a minute, Tanya, I'm going to ask you to give one big final push to deliver the shoulder.
It's going to be fine, all right? It's going to be just fine.
And Max, did you ever play cricket?
Yeah, school, yeah.
Well, this is where your fielding training's about to pay off. It's just like being in the slips until the baby comes a little bit slower, so nothing to worry about, all right? So when I tell Tanya to push, you get ready to catch the baby. Push as hard as you can, Tanya, okay? And Max, try not to drop the baby.
It's coming.
Okay, Tanya, now push.
Baby, push. Come on. Push. Just push out. There it is. It's a baby, look. It's a baby, look.
Bob!
I'm afraid we've got some bad news.
I'll see you and raise your 10. My waters are broken!
Paddy!
I should be having a cesarean.
Get over yourself! You're here, aren't you? Come on, we need all the help we can get!
I can't do this. Mum, don't make me do this. Oh my God!
Oh, yes.
I can't believe this is happening.
You're just gonna stand there? With the flipping ex-Marlon! Never should have gone with him. Never mind, Marlon! These 2 aren't gonna wait! Heads out! Heads out! Come on, Viv, you can do this!
How the hell do you know?
Come on, just really get behind this one!
Mark!
You're alright, Viv, you're doing really well.
Get it out!
You've done it! You've done it! Oh, we've got a daughter!
A daughter?
It's a tiny, perfect little girl!
Who's a daughter?
So you saw on those videos pretty dramatic stuff, not much warning, quite a lot of water, a bit of shouting. Shauna, how does that compare to your experiences of going into labour?
I know it's like that for some people, but that's not how it was with me. My first child was actually overdue, so I was a little bit late.
So when you say overdue, what does that mean? Because we have pregnancy termed normally in numbers of weeks in this country. How many weeks were you pregnant for?
Okay, so they had told me 40 weeks. They had given me a date for the Sunday, which was 40 weeks. And I have to say, in my head, that was the most important date in my entire life.
Yeah.
Once it got nearer and nearer to that date, I was absolutely convinced that my baby was going to be born at any second. I couldn't believe it when the Sunday came and went and no baby. And then Monday and Tuesday, and it was terrible. Those were the longest days of my life. And I think my expectations were totally too high. I really believed, I had no idea.
So did you think it was going to be like you see it on the TV, that you were going to get to your 40 weeks and then you were going to go,
yeah,
baby?
Of course. I thought I was going to get to 40 weeks or probably before. You know, I wasn't going to, that was the last date that it was in my head, you know. And then it was just going to all happen. It was going to be really quick and et cetera, et cetera. And
but of course, normal pregnancy, we now know, can last anything up to 42 weeks and even beyond. A normal pregnancy is usually between 38 and 42 weeks. Some babies take longer, some babies come a little bit earlier. But I think it's something like 80% are born between 38 and 42 weeks gestation. So really 40 weeks is just an average.
Yeah, and I've heard since that only 5% of babies are actually born on their due date. So if I had known that at the time, I think I would have been less stressed out.
You might have been better buying a lottery ticket.
That's true.
Better chance of winning.
So anyway, so I did start eventually on the sort of Wednesday night, early hours of Thursday morning. And
so a full 4 days
yeah,
overdue.
In my head, this was like really, really late. And I started with one big contraction. And it was a bit like on TV that way. It was very, it was very obvious that that's what it was.
So there was no build-up. You had no Braxton Hicks contractions are very common in pregnancy.
Oh, yeah,
so
I had some of those. So my womb was like tightening up.
Practicing.
For the last, I'd say probably the last week or two, leading up to that, I was getting these tightenings. And some of those were quite sore. But, you know, I thought at the time, I didn't know what labour was. And I thought at the time, oh, this could be it, this could be it. Every flipping time it happened. And of course it wasn't. They're only Braxton Hicks.
But then you got the big one.
Then I got the big one and I knew, that's different. So I was lucky. I know lots of women who don't get it like that. It just happens gradually. But
what was different about that contraction to the previous ones?
Okay, it was much, much more painful. I think that was the key difference.
So it stopped you in your tracks?
Yeah, and it was the middle of the night. It woke me up. And I hadn't been asleep that long. And it woke me out of my sleep and it was really, really intense. So I just lay awake and waited to see what would happen.
Yes, pensive moments. I think though sometimes it does start with, you know, the big contraction, and certainly my first labour was a bit like that. Second time round, I'm sure we'll talk about it, a whole different story, so much harder to gauge. So so your first one was, there was no mistaking, your labour had started. Had your waters broken at that stage?
No, the waters actually didn't go until the very end. So it was, but then I think I was a bit stressed. I think as soon as I got this big contraction.
First baby,
yeah,
bit scared.
Oh,
yeah,
this is it. And I lay awake for ages and there was nothing else. But I think maybe about a half an hour later I got another contraction. And this kind of went on all night. The problem with that, of course, is I missed a whole night's sleep.
Yes.
And when labour really got going the next morning,
you need your energy.
I was already wrecked, you know, so I'd have been better, you know, trying to relax and but it was just too, it was actually exciting. It's the one time in your life when you get pain and you quite like it.
Well, it's leading to something really positive, so yeah, it's a really positive feeling. I think for some ladies, especially first time mums, going into labour is quite scary, and it's that fear sometimes that can almost hold us back. And we're going to be talking in a little while about potential ways to help yourself get into labour if you're feeling really, really fed up and thinking, when is this baby going to be born? I think ways to get over your fear and relax yourself can play a really, really big part. So, but you were already there.
Yeah, but again, I didn't know enough. So, you know, I now know that the labour hormones need us to be relaxed and in a positive frame of mind. And if, you know, if we do get stressed out, that actually interferes with the hormones itself.
Counts against it, absolutely.
Yeah, so that might have been a little bit of that the first time around. And actually my sister had something similar, because when she laboured really well at home, but then when she went into the hospital, she took one look at the hospital environment and everything stopped.
Yeah, that's very common. Actually, you probably know people who have been great guns in the car and walk through the doors and then suddenly go,
And
and that's a very natural response, for we are animals at the end of the day, and animals only usually give birth when they feel safe. So sometimes fear, as again, it can slow things down. It can also prevent you from even going into labour, I think, sometimes. So tell us about number 2 then. Was it similar?
Okay. No, very different. So number 2, the baby came 3 days before the official due date.
So you weren't ready?
I was completely, I had that now got into my head, you know, that the due date is only approximate, and, you know, it could be any time in the next 2 weeks, and it was just before Christmas, and I was thinking about other things. I went with my little boy to a Christmas party that morning and came back and did some housework, and Braxton Hicks all day. And normally I only got Braxton Hicks for an hour or so and then they would stop. But they just kept going. And it was only when my partner came home from work and he asked me how I was, and I said, oh yeah, I've got Braxton Hicks quite a lot today. And I said, actually, they're still going.
I think it's important to explain Braxton Hicks contractions again. They're very normal. Most people have them when they're pregnant. They're just tightenings, wombs sort of getting ready, the blood's, you know, you're practicing for labour. You can usually carry on with your daily life. They don't really get so painful that you have to stop what you're doing. So I think once they cross the line into maybe you have to stop what you're doing or stop talking, that might be something different. But normal little tightenings and so on, it's nothing to panic about. Perfectly normal.
Well, that's what happened. It gradually then came on during the early evening, and you know, he was going, you know, we need to ring, we need to phone the midwife, and I was like, no, I'm fine, because the thing is, you are fine in between, you know. So basically the Braxton Hicks gradually turned into stronger contractions, and it was only one of my sisters happened to ring me, and then everybody was ringing me because I was saying, oh yeah, there might be something happening, but I'm not sure. So the whole flipping family was ringing me then. But during one of the phone calls, I actually sat the phone down because a contraction had come and I wasn't able to
and
keep
it had
talking.
crossed the line between niggly sore
Yeah.
to proper sore. Yeah.
Now, I didn't really appreciate that. It was him. He said,
Sometimes
"This is
having
it."
somebody observing you is actually really helpful, especially somebody who's maybe understands labour quite well. They can often tell you better. Certainly I had an experience with, I had a doula for my second child, and I was saying to her, no, it's not, no, it's nothing. And she said, no, Anne, you've rung me twice now. I'm
Yes.
coming. And she was right. She was right. So
because I was the same. I was playing it down. I was saying, no, this could all stop. This could be nothing. And I suppose partly in my head I was thinking of the last time where it had started very suddenly and very definitely. Now this time as well, the second one, I'd had a show sort of 24 hours beforehand, and, you know, there was a few wee signs, I suppose.
And the show, again, a show is a sign that perhaps labour might be close, and a show is where the plug of mucus that holds the neck of the womb sealed, protects the baby from any bacteria and infection, and that starts to loosen and can come away as you get closer and closer to labour. Sometimes it comes away with labour, but sometimes it comes away perhaps even weeks beforehand, as I experienced, and that wasn't much fun. So you had a show. And then
the Braxton Hicks gradually getting stronger, and it was that moment when I put the phone down and I couldn't talk when my husband said, this is it, I'm phoning the midwife, you know. So it was very different to the first one.
Number 3?
Number 3 was different again. She was born in the daytime, but I actually started the night before. But what happened was my in-laws were staying because they had come to stay with us to help out with the other two.
It all gets more complicated the more children you add in as well.
I know. So and they're great, and I'm very relaxed with them. But I think just the fact that there was visitors in my house meant that I was a bit more stressed. And I think actually labour was trying to start that night before. I had 2 or 3 big contractions and I thought, this is it. But I was just too stressed out and I wasn't ready.
Isn't that amazing though? I think that is quite incredible, the way sometimes when we're not in our safe place, maybe even in our heads, that we don't actually go into labour, our bodies can sort of choose when they start. And one of the things that we maybe talk about in a little bit is some of the alternative therapies that can really help to relax you and to get you over that sort of stress, because the end of pregnancy is quite tough. You get tired, you get fed up, you get really, really big, and sometimes it's really, really nice if you can find a good way to relax yourself and really look after yourself, and then sometimes that's all it takes. So for mums who are sailing over 40 weeks and terrified that they're going to get induced or whatever, it can be really helpful to maybe have some alternative therapies, aromatherapy, relaxation, reflexology, which is fabulous, acupressure as well, homeopathy, aromatherapy, all of those things, although not backed up by research, anecdotally, mums will tell you that can really help to relax and maybe help them to get into labour. So did you try any of those things yourself? What ways did you try to encourage labour?
There's a lot of myths out there. There's a lot of information, and you know yourself, once you get to that stage, you will do anything to get things started, because it just becomes the biggest thing in your life, and you wait a flipping year for your baby to be ready to come. And once you feel ready, you just want it to happen. And you're right. I mean, a lot of it is about relaxation, and I really think that's what happened with me the third time. I was too stressed out the night before, but I got to sleep. I had a good night's sleep, and I woke up at 5:30 in the morning in labour.
Yes, because maybe the sleep as well.
Yeah, I needed that, you know. But I mean, people were talking about raspberry leaf tea, raspberry leaf tablets, going for long walks, having hot baths, eating curry, castor oil, having sex. There was a million things. Everywhere you go, there was people giving you advice.
Somebody would give you helpful advice about how to get into labour.
I tried them all.
I
tried them all, and I don't know what actually worked for me. I mean, you know.
I tried them all, and I'm not going to tell you what worked for me.
Right, very good. But even the raspberry leaf, they're saying there's no real studies on it either way. But
it's an old wives'
Yeah.
As are many of the other ones that you mentioned as well.
But some of those do turn out to be true. So, we will try anything. And the long walks are good in other ways. So, I mean, it's good to be a wee bit fit.
A nice walk will actually maybe help the baby to get into a good position. And the baby getting into a good position could be the thing that starts your labour off. Plus the wee head bouncing on your cervix could also help to kick off labour. There's a variety of things you can do, some of which I mentioned earlier, complementary therapies that are not backed up by research, but some other stuff that really, is, I think, things like having sex, nipple stimulation, anything that would get the oxytocin, that happy hormone, and also the hormone that triggers labour for you, anything that gets your oxytocin flowing, pleasurable things can really, really help to get you into labour. And these natural methods of induction shouldn't be overlooked in a rush to go down a medical route, because actually it works for a lot of people. I can maybe prevent you having a more medical
And I
experience.
was really determined not to have medical induction. I really did not want to be induced. I think, for me, I think it's much better if I go myself, go naturally.
When your body is...
when the baby's ready, when it's cooked, then it'll come out, So, I just wanted to be as natural as possible to start with, because also I'd heard about sometimes when you're induced, that makes other things riskier then in the
There
birth.
are increased risks with a medical induction that maybe when, your body going into labour naturally, you're not going to face those increased risks, So fantastic. What other signs are there that labour might be close? Well, one of the signs in a first-time mum might be that the baby's head goes down into the pelvis and starts to engage. In a second-time mum or a third-time mum, that can happen closer to labour, so you might not want to rely on that as a sign. Other signs might be the nesting instinct, this fabled nesting instinct that I never got. My house was always untidy, but I know my sister was scrubbing cupboards. Did you do any scrubbing?
It was more a conscious thing. With the second one, where the Braxton Hicks just gradually turned into labour, there was a point during that process when I was like, I don't want this to stop. I want this to be it. And so instead of sitting down after tea, I actually got the vacuum out and got the polish out and did a bit of housework, because I thought that would keep it going,
Yeah, you kept active.
Yeah, I don't know if it worked or not, but it wasn't like nesting. It wasn't like, I have this tremendous urge to clean out cupboards.
Oh, I know people who have, though, and I think the nesting instinct is probably, for some people, really valid. They just get this, I've got to clean my house, and find themselves standing on top of a stepladder at 3 a.m, and it's not a good idea. Don't recommend it. Obviously, Braxton Hicks are normal, but you might find you get more Braxton Hicks as you're approaching labour. We talked about the loss of the mucus plug and so on. And again, maybe a bit more leakage from downstairs. Now let's talk about this, because waters break very dramatically, as you've seen on the clip. But sometimes it doesn't happen like that, and they can leak and trickle. And sometimes you might not be sure if your waters have broken or not.
Yeah.
Did that happen to you?
No, my brother's wife, though, that happened to her, where the waters actually broke before she was really in labour. And there was no sign of labour starting. But the waters had gone and they were trickling, clear fluid.
Did she know it was her waters? Because sometimes it's hard to know.
She didn't. I don't think she was sure to start with what it was.
So did she speak to a midwife about it? Right.
So
Obviously, if you find that you're wondering, I'm not sure if my waters have broken, you must go and see a midwife or speak to your GP, find out what's going on, because you really, although you know, it's not a big deal. It's important to know so that you can mitigate against the risks of any infections. Once that sac is broken, if your waters are trickling, then there is the possibility of infection. And that's why doctors sometimes talk about inducing mums who have had their waters broken for more than 24 hours. That you don't necessarily have to be induced. You could choose to have something called expectant management, I think. No.
Yes.
And expectant management means that they keep an eye on you and watch for signs of infection, and that's really important if your waters have broken. So your waters broke
Yeah,
at the end the first time.
Towards the end in all my labours.
Okay.
So I never had that whole thing of the waters breaking early.
No.
It was always towards the end of first stage. I think it was the end of first stage with all of them. But but my sister-in-law, it was the opposite. You know, the waters went first, and then...
And it can be really hard to know, so it's really important that if you think you've got an extra bit of water down there, you do speak to somebody and get it checked out. And again, the same goes for any concerns that you have. If your baby's not moving as much as maybe you're used to, or, you know, anything to do with, towards the end of pregnancy, if you have any concerns, don't be scared to annoy people and pick up the phone and ring. They're not going to mind. You might feel embarrassed to phone, but do pick up the phone and just get a bit of advice from a medical professional if you're worried.
I think the other thing they'd said to me was about bleeding and the difference between the show, which can have a bit of old blood in it, to fresh bleeding. And fresh bleeding, they wanted us to ring straight away.
Absolutely. So reduced movements and any increased bleeding. And perhaps what we can do is put some numbers for local maternity units underneath this video now, so that you can have those to hand, just in case you have any worries or concerns. Now, Shauna, in the end, your labours got...
They all progressed, and they all got there in the end. So the starts were very different, but after a certain point, there's no denying that you're in labour. And that, for me, that was the bit where the contractions were painful and regular.
Yes.
And they were lasting longer as well. So the initial ones were kind of shorter, even though they were painful. But then I could see over time, or Andrew was tracking
increased frequency, increased intensity, increased duration.
Yeah.
And some people find it helpful to use, timing their contractions and so on. That can be really, really helpful. I have to say that for myself, second time around, it wasn't so helpful because they were jumping around all over the place, and I was still in labour. So again, I would probably say myself, it's the strength of the contraction and how long it lasts, and there'll come a point where you're not in any doubt, and at that stage you put into action your labour plan, I suppose. So thank you very much for coming in and sharing your experiences with me today. I'm sure it'll have been helpful for people to hear them, and thank you for watching. I hope it's been helpful. Please get in touch with us now. We want to hear your stories about having babies in this local area and your experiences. Especially, I'd like to hear from somebody if they've had a really positive cesarean section, because we want to talk about cesarean sections and how they can be a really positive and empowering experience, for mums. They don't have to be, an emergency situation. So please do get in touch. You can actually join us on Facebook now. We have a new Facebook page, Destination Baby. Look us up and come, and you can ask questions. You can give us some feedback. Any concerns you have, you can raise to us, or else you can email Destination Newry, or you can leave us a comment under the video. But that's all for this time, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for watching.